Hi everyone, it's Jerry. This is game 2 from the World Chess Championship 2024. Going into game 2, Ding Liren with the lead 1-0 in this race to 7.5. Here's a nice photo of the two. Ding Liren in this game opting for e4. And the opening we work with is an Italian game. An Italian 4 knights. a6 provides some escape hatch for this dark square bishop, and now a4. We're going to see that this guy ends up being the big difference in the game. It will be established not long off on this a5 square, and even sets black into a bit of a think once positioned there. We continue with d6 and castles. Black from here plays h6, cuts out any pin of the knight. Speaking of pins, I was wondering about black doing similar to white in this position rather than h6. What happens, how should white play it if bishop g4? I want to give you an idea how you can get out of this pin in a successful way, especially with knight d4 right around the corner. If bishop g4, the approach here should be to question the bishop. And now you can follow with knight to d5. And right around the corner for white is c3, cutting out further pressure on f3. If black in this position increases the pressure on the knight, here is your way out of this pin. It's with g4. Best here would be bishop g6, but here's the thing to really touch on, and that is this potential sacrifice on g4. After knight takes g4, if you're recapturing, you would be losing as white. The approach here would be this timely knight takes knight, unleashing the queen. If queen h4 here, there's queen to f3. It's a winning position here for white. Queen could eventually tuck herself away on this g2 square. So I want to give you at least a taste how you can approach this potential pin. In this game, it is h6, and not long off, what do we have here? Tension between all bishops. Play continues with a5, and follow-up, bishop takes bishop, pawn takes, and black ends up castling here. What happens if the bishop takes here? We're recapturing. These double isolated pawns may look not the brightest, but this extra pawn controls important squares. d4 and f4 combats black's strongest pawn and also has this half-open file to work with. Ideas of the knight drifting into f5 come into focus from here. Also, the other line to really touch on here, and you can be sure Ding Liren was prepared for such a line before playing this a5 move. It's bishop to b4. What would white play here? Knight d5 would be the way. I mean, there's a serious threat to take the knight. Tripled pawns, that would definitely not be good for white. Knight d5 would be the way to follow up. Now, I want to touch on two variations from here. One's where black kicks off winning a pawn. We're going to touch on knight takes e4 and bishop takes a5. I'm going to give you a feel for how you can continue in both cases and what ideas Ding Liren may have had up his sleeve in both cases. So let's first look at knight takes e4. Queen d3 would be the best reply. If the knight goes to f6, white would already be winning. With queen b3 targeting the bishop and b7, this point will soon collapse. The queen side is about ready to collapse. Best in this position would be knight c5, targeting the queen. After the queen moves, Now white has this idea of c3 and b4 landing a fork. If black gets out of that, let's say moves the knight here, it's a position like this that really made me recall the games I played against Leela in these knight odds games, where the queen assumes a very strong post. One side's queen assumes a very strong post, and the other is still just camping out on home base. It says castles here. There is this idea for the other knight to drift into this f5 square. And I'm to put on just one more move for each side. A position like this would already be considered winning for white. Super invasive knights, very strong white queen post. The other line here, rather than in this position meet knight d5 with knight takes e4, what happens if bishop takes a5? You can continue here with knight to h4. In the event of knight takes e4, queen g4 would already be winning, targeting the knight, defending a knight, targeting a pawn. And now there's this idea to get into f5 once more. Best here would be to cut out the knight move, but after queen to f3, it prefers white here by nearly a pawn. g6, we can note, takes away a square from a knight, but now this guy's eyes open up towards h6. How do you complete development exactly as black? You can't castle as easily now with h6, a bit vulnerable. So in both of these lines, what are we noticing? There is this idea for the knight to drift into this sensitive f5 square, or at least attempt to. All right, in this game, we do not have these pawn grab ideas. It is castles. This is move 10. Quick update here regarding the times. Ding Liren only spent about 3 minutes at this stage, and Gukesh spent 23 minutes. All right, we continue with bishop takes bishop and b3. Some security over c4. There may be continuations where this knight wants to go into Pac-Man mode, taking on a5 and then c4. All right, we got that covered. Queens come off in this game. Rook a to d8. And now a bit of an unusual move, a deep move here. White ends up playing rook d to c1, abandoning this only open file. So what's up with that? Well, in a way, it's like if you try and compete for this only open file, this guy could end up falling. How do you maintain support of this pawn here while still competing for this file? You really can't do both. So in a way, white is saying, I'm going to give some weight to ensuring I don't give up my furthest advanced pawn. This is the one piece or pawn that would maybe grab my attention first. If this position was on some flashcard and it was thrown right before my eyes, this is maybe the first thing that sticks out to me. This has some cramping effect on black's queen side. The c5 pawn is a bit disjointed. Now, there is not a natural defender of this point. If ever b6, you can take and the rook would spring to life. White's play is rook d to c1. A couple tempi have been invested to get this pawn up to a5. Let's not be so quick to maybe give that pawn up. If we make some other move besides this, black could consider taking, and if we're recapturing with the knight, e4 falls. And if you take with the rook, the a5 pawn can fall. All that said, there are still some deep lines where you can allow this pawn to be captured, and I'd like to highlight one of them just to emphasize how tricky a game could be here when these guys are still around. So one continuation here, rather than abandoning this open file, is to withdraw this knight. Allow a rook exchange, taking here, e4 falls. This continuation right here, it seems like white is getting the pawn back, but black would have knight d7 here. But now d5 is opened up for this guy, and how is black defending c7? That's not a defense. We'd have a fork. It suggests get this knight back into the ballgame and allow this pawn to be won. Why not save the pawn and give the knight a kick? Well, you see what just happened? Once this pawn is on c6, what's this guy doing? It would all of a sudden have no moves. There's ideas here of knight to b2, rook to a1, very, very complicated stuff. Follow-up moves of even some sacrifice here, exploiting this awkward placement of the knight on a5. Really deep stuff. Has to definitely weigh those continuations very carefully. All right, in this one, what do we have? It is, after rook a to d8, rook d to c1, knight hops into d4, knight e1 only now, and it's not attractive capturing the knight. Black gets to undouble. Knight is going to be kicked from c3. e4 can fall. How does white play it? It's knight to e1. Another move here. If you take on e5, black can get the pawn back after rook f to e8. And if you're supporting the knight, there's even a sacrifice on e4, followed up with f6 or even knight to e2 here in this position. It's also another interesting line right around here. If after knight takes e5, instead of this one, knight takes e4, and knight takes knight, best here would be to skewer these knights straight away. If you go in for this fork, here's the cute move here. In the end, you don't take this knight right away because black will be getting one of these guys. Best here would be knight c3. Super move. What is happening? Well, we're ducking this skewer idea. Knight's on a more secure square. Knight is watching out for the rook getting to the back rank, and this knight is stuck. You target the knight, we can save him, move him away to a healthy square. We'll soon be looking at a position where it's two knights versus a rook. White is for choice. All right. Ding Liren does not have any interest in picking up this center pawn, recognizes the counterplay black would have, so it is knight to e1. Follow up, black is preparing to double rooks. Incremental moves from here, small improving moves. g6, rook gets back on this open file now. Security over e4, king g7, king f2. And after h5, we have knight to e2. Rather than this h5 move, one of the ideas the computer's looking at is this idea of knight h5, allowing this knight to hop in here, and it says, who cares about this pawn? Try and open up the f-file. So some continuation like this, with knight to f6, this pawn can fall shortly. If you try to defend it, king to e3, there's knight to g4. Black would already be considered winning in that position. All right, black in this game has no interest in playing with this f5 idea, no interest in giving up control over this d5 square. After h5, it's knight to e2. Knight c6 is now played, and the knight returns to c3. This is essentially an offer of a draw. There cannot be a draw before move 40 unless there is some repetition of position. Both players felt right around this stage it's about an equal position, so they ended up in this game 2 simply repeating moves, a threefold repetition on board in this one. A peaceful result to game 2. So, what did you think of this one? Feel free, as usual, to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care.